Well, hello there. I'm Poppa Jon, and I'm passionate about comic book movies, but I also love nothing more than to explore and analyze horror films. So if you enjoy Heroes in Horror, click the subscribe button, hit the notification ding. However, today, we're doing a slight detour. It's Oscars weekend. We do have a horror movie that I'm going to talk about today. We also have sort of a sci-fi epic blockbuster, which is essentially a Heroes. It might not be based off a comic book. It is based off a book, though. But it's Heroes adjacent, if nothing else. However, we got like 8 other films as well. Obviously, throughout most of the year, I'm focused on horror movies, comic book movies, that sort of shit. However, I do kind of like the Oscars because I love all types of movies. I'm more of an artistic guy than a prestige guy in terms of the type of critically acclaimed movies that I enjoy, other than just schlocky horror and superhero stuff. But yeah, so nonetheless, here we are. I enjoy the Oscars as sort of a watch list for maybe great movies that I didn't necessarily get to see or check out beforehand. And so I figured I'll rank the Best Picture nominees. Very interesting year in terms of the Best Picture nominees. But let's not waste any more time. Let's kick the shit to the fan and get this shit started. Mingle. And coming in at number 10, the worst Best Picture nominee of the year is, by no surprise to anybody, it's Emilia Perez. I don't get this nomination. I'm not the right person to describe the representation of Latinxes and Mexicans and trans rights. But the fact is, those people say this is a horrible representation of them. So does it really represent them the way they want to be represented? That right there is an issue. But even pushing all of that controversy aside, what is the tone of this movie? It is a huge tonal mess. It does like a cheesy musical stuff and comedy. From penis to vagina. And then it does very serious, almost especially towards the end, what felt more like the end of like a Scorsese mob thriller with the bombastic ending they try and give it. And you just get this contrasting tone that just never feels coherent throughout. I don't want to talk about this movie too much, but it is by far the worst movie on this list. Like, it's not even close. This is the only movie out of these 10 movies that I would legitimately give a thumbs down to and say is a bad movie. And that is rare for me to say to any Best Picture nomination. To be fair, most of these movies, I might not say that. Half of these movies would not make my personal top 10, but I still think most of them are worthy of a Best Picture nomination. Not this one. Why is this here? I think it's worthy of a Best Actress nomination, or Supporting Actress, if you will. I don't think she should win, but it's a performance worthy of the nomination. I think, is it El Mal, I think is the one. I think that song, I think you take that scene by itself, I think that scene is worthy of Best Scene of the year, but that one amazing, great scene does not make a good movie, because the rest of the movie sucks. At number 9, I have Nickel Boys. This is one where I think the story deserves a movie that is Best Picture nomination. However, I don't necessarily think this is that movie. Mainly because I think the story, I think screenplay-wise, I think it deserves a screenplay nomination. But I think at times the POV, the decision to make it a POV movie, I respect the decision, and I think in theory and on paper, it is a great, magnificent, artistic decision. In execution, I think it distracts from the powerful story that it's trying to tell. But I also think it makes it to where you don't get as many emotional shots of the characters' emotional expressions that they go through. And just, it kind of just even weirdly hinders the acting part of it, because the actors are giving performances off screen for like the main actors at least, so you're not getting the big emotional like full facial acting performance from them in a lot of the scenes. It does get better when Turner gets introduced and you get a POV from both of them. Like, I have it at number 9, but there's a huge gap between this and Emilia Perez. I think it's a good movie. It's a really good movie. But one of the reasons it is at number 9 is because there's also, I think they took too much of an art house approach. And this is coming from someone who prefers art house movies over prestige movies. They took an art house approach to a lot of things. Like, the example I'm going to use is when there's just randomly a donkey in the hallway, even though it's not actually there. And to me, that becomes more distracting than it does impactful when you have such an amazing and impactful story. At number 8, we have Wicked. This is mainly at number 8 because it's just not for me. I think they did a great job making this movie. I love musicals, though. Like, that's the thing is, I say it's not for me, but I am a musical guy. However, I like specific types of musicals. I like Grease and Hairspray, In the Heights, West Side Story. I like it using the musical as a way to bring a fantastical element to a grounded story. Grease, West Side Story, Hairspray. These are more grounded love stories or whatever type of story you want to use. And the musical brings a fantastical element to that groundedness. Wicked is a musical that brings the fantastical element of musicals and adds it to a movie that's already super fantastical. But yeah, it is a movie not for me, but it's really well made. And next we have The Brutalist. I feel like this might be a little low for some people. I did not like the directions it went towards the very end of this movie, to be fair. I really loved the first part of this movie. I loved the cinematography. The score was really good. I loved the performances. And I loved the exploration. Like, I loved the overall thing. Like, this is a great fucking movie that deserves a Best Picture nomination. My only thing, the reason I have it at number 7, like I said, these movies, at this point, these movies are so good, you have to just find small nitpicky things to separate them. So I want to make that clear. These aren't necessarily full-on criticisms as much as just things that separate them within the ranking. And so with The Brutalist, I don't like the part of the story. I like revenge movie, like horror movies. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. It just kind of, it feels like something that just kind of randomly happened in Italy. Then they kind of moved past it. And then it gets randomly brought up at the end. And I don't think that is the point of this movie. The point of this movie should be sort of this almost rags to riches and back to rags again, which is something we'll get to later. Or rags to riches, back to rags, and then back to riches again because of the epilogue. The fact that the whole climactic moment felt like something that wasn't really a theme that was explored through the entire movie. It felt anticlimactic for that reason. The stuff, I guess that's a spoiler. This was not a theme that was explored throughout the whole movie, for me, in my opinion, from my visual experience. And so to just have that be the focal point of the climactic moment made it feel anticlimactic from a thematic sense. But that's pretty much it. The rest of the movie's great. And next we have I'm Still Here. I was loving this movie for a large portion of this film. I adored it. I still do adore it. I think it's an amazing movie. It's currently in my top. It's it's hovering there in the top, whether it makes my personal top 10 or not. It's hovering. We're in that territory where these are definitely honorable mentions, if not in my top 10. Especially like the beginning of the movie, and even the middle of the movie, and even the way they end it, the 70s side of the movie ends. I loved everything about that. You know, I'm a big fan of Antonioni and Blow Up. I love those references. And not even just references within the dialogue, but references with like the camera that the one daughter uses and just stuff like that, I think was a really good touch. The reason this is lower is because it does kind of lose me. There's too many time jumps in the end, in the falling action, in the third act. There's just too many time jumps, and it loses the impact for me because of that. If it just was mainly the story that took place in the 70s, and then you do those little credits things like, ooh, Fernanda Torres' character went on to do this and everything that you get in a lot of biopic movies, stuff like that. I think that would have been a lot, to me personally, a much better approach to it rather than just doing a time jump to 20 years later, then a time jump to another 20 years later. Like I said, this is still like a 4.5-star movie out of 5. This is a great movie. Kicking off the top 5, these are definitely movies that would probably make my top 10. Like, definitely make my top, not just honorable mention potential, but actually in my top 10 of the year. And that would be Anora. This was a movie, I weirdly went in thinking this was like going to be my favorite movie of the year. I loved the trailers. Everyone was giving it glowing reviews. And I still love this fucking movie. I think in most years, this would be at least number 2 of my favorite movies of the year. I thought Mikey Madison's performance was great. This is a movie tailor-made for me. You're taking a controversial industry, a controversial job, and making it relatable and understandable, and you tell this sort of pseudo-princess story. You do sort of rags to riches and then back to rags story with Anora. I don't really have many complaints here. I think the thing that took me out of it was sort of, I didn't know the direction the story was heading. I just knew people loved the movie. And I guess I need to rewatch it. I should probably rewatch it knowing the end of the Yvonne side of it. But I guess in my head, I just kept waiting for Yvonne to I don't know. The hopeless romantic in me was hoping that Yvonne would come through in the end. And that obviously never happened. I don't really have anything negative to say other than the direction of the Yvonne character wasn't what I was wanting initially. But if I rewatch it, knowing that, it might make me actually appreciate the movie more and make it higher on this list. Especially because, at least number 4, I don't see it getting in my top 3. But that leads us in to number 4. Which is A Complete Unknown. I am a big fan. I am a sucker for musician biopics. They're very easy sells for me. And I love Bob Dylan, The Ballad of a Thin Man, which I don't remember actually being featured in this movie, is one of my favorite songs of all time. I love Timothée Chalamet as well, so seeing him in here was great. I'm a big Johnny Cash fan, and even though I didn't go in expecting this, the performance for Johnny Cash's performance here is great. It's an amazing Johnny Cash. I think it's an amazing supporting character version of Johnny Cash. I don't think this actor, at least in this direction of the character, would work in a Johnny Cash biopic. Especially when you have Joaquin Phoenix already playing him. But as a supporting character, this is the perfect Johnny Cash performance. I loved this movie. That being said, the reason it's number 4, and the reason I would give it 4.5 out of 5 rather than 5 out of 5 is because I think the first half of the movie just kind of felt okay, kind of typical. Here we go. Guy meets a hero, plays at a couple bars, becomes big famous thing. But once it actually gets into the famous thing, and sort of after the times they are changing, that's when it really hit me. Like that scene when he started playing Times They Are Changing at the music festival, and everything from there on, I adored. It was that first half, it just kind of felt we had to get through this to get to the second half. The other thing, though, one of the reasons I loved this movie and why it's not lower on the list is this depiction of Johnny Cash, of Bob Dylan, the Timothée Chalamet's depiction of Bob Dylan, I find extremely, extremely relatable. I don't know what that says about me as a person, but I found him extremely relatable. Like, I just feel like I've had similar conversations with people, with like some of my best friends. Oh, Monica Barbaro's performance, great. I think out of the nominees, at least, for Best Supporting Actress, she is the one that should win. I don't think she will, but I would say she is the one. She would be my pick. Now we have the top three. These movies, I think, are top three, top four, 5-star movies from last year. These are like the 5-star movies from last year.
And therefore no need for faith.
And coming in at number 3 is Conclave. This is not one. This is one I was expecting to be lower on the list. I went in just like, I got to get this over with. You know, I want to watch all the Best Picture nominees. I like to do that, try to do that every year. This is the first year that I've actually done that successfully. But I went in just kind of, I got to get through it. It's just some prestige Oscar Beatty movie about a pope. I was blown away by this movie. This is a movie I was watching. I was like, this weirdly kind of reminds me of an Italian Paolo Sorrentino type of direction, to not fully story-wise, but in the direction, the actual like directing of it, that I actually really appreciated. But on top of that, the thing that really solidified this for me is I do like election movies that are not directly related to a specific issue that's going on. I like it more. I'm someone that I like political science, but I hate politics. I don't know if that tells you anything. And so like the election side of this, I absolutely adored. And I thought this is like the perfect way to do a moderate election movie where both sides of the story, both sides of the election, every side has dirt and things working against them. And it's just, you have this one guy, the Ralph Fiennes character, just sitting there in the middle trying to moderate the whole thing. And it's brilliant. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. The way this movie was made, the cinematography, the production design, the editing, the frickin' costume designs, the acting, it was all, I thought, just absolutely brilliant. And the way they explored elections and the election process was great. And there's even a side of that where they explore sort of other things, like there's a bombing outside, like kind of targeting the election, but you don't really get to see it, but you get to feel the inside impact of what that's like. And so there's a weird commentary there as well. Like there's just so many things here that it's a perfect way to do a moderate movie in a time period where it feels like nobody is moderate, at least people that are actually saying and doing things. And I just absolutely adored that. I loved it. Also with Conclave, it has all these great things that I mentioned, but the score, this is like, in terms of the scores that were nominated for Best Score, this is by far my favorite. I absolutely adore the score for Conclave. And now we're in the top 2 movies of the year. And not just the top 2 Best Picture, but these are my top 2 of the year. And honestly, they're essentially tied for me. I came into this, I didn't know which one I would have at number 1, which one I would have at number 2. I go back and forth, but at number 2...
May thy knife chip and shatter.
It's Dune Part 2. I'm putting Dune Part 2 at number 2, or tied for number 1. This is an amazing movie. It baffles me that this did not get more nominations. The score thing I can understand, I disagree, but I understand that, I guess. Austin Butler, Javier Bardem, and Rebecca Ferguson especially. Even Zendaya. I am a huge Zendaya fan. I think she should have been nominated for a different movie rather than this one. She should have been nominated for something. This is just a great movie. Like, the technical aspects are so well done. It's bafflingly, it baffles my brain how you can do things like this so well and still have it all come together. Like, it's baffling. He wasn't directed for Best Director, and it does all of these technical things so well, and it comes together so perfectly. Like, what the fuck? Like, come on now. Come on. Plus, I love cults. I'm not a documentary guy, but if there's a documentary about a cult, I'm more than likely going to watch that fucking documentary. I love cults. I love the idea of cults, sort of similar to, like, I guess, liking political science over politics. I love the inner workings of things and just think, like, how things work. And, like, how someone starts a cult is something that I find so, and the reasons behind it, and sort of whether the person wants to or not. And just exploring that in such a huge, epic, sci-fi, space fantasy type of movie like this, it is just brilliant to me. They do such a great job exploring the ideas of faith and Messiah and cults and all of that, while also having huge, epic action sequences and giant worms that all look fucking realistic, like it was just actually happening in front of you. It's so good. Plus, you have Timothée Chalamet in a romance with Zendaya. That's all I need to sell me on a movie.
People are gonna love that.
But here we are. At number 1, I am going to put The Substance. Because Dune Part 2 I expected to be a fucking great movie, but The Substance just came out of nowhere and became one of the greatest horror movies in decades. The greatest body horror movie since The Fly. It's just so good. And one thing I will say is, to me, this is the most Kubrickian movie that has ever been made that was not directed by Kubrick. By intentional design, like, it's actually, like, there's certain things that are intentionally designed to pay homage to The Shining, and there's even other elements. Like, there are elements in here that feel like almost Clockwork Orangey, like the way some of the side characters, especially their portrayals and the way they're acted, kind of remind me of a lot of the side characters from A Clockwork Orange in terms of the direction of their performance, more so than the characters themselves, but the direction of the performance of the characters. This movie blew me away. Like, I don't even know what else to say. It blew me fucking away. The production design, the cinematography, the score, it is just amazing. The performances, Margaret Qualley should have gotten a supporting actress nod, but like Demi Moore, I think, for me personally, I think Mikey Madison gave the best performance of the year. However, I want Demi Moore to win, just because I think Mikey Madison has the potential to just be able to win one in the future, because she's a lot younger, sadly. Why is that sad? Anyway, yeah, The Substance, it blew me away. The fact that they can put all of this deep commentary in a horror, it's why I love horror. It's not like people are saying, oh, finally horror's getting these deep commentary. You can go back to the fucking 80s. Yeah, it might be cheesy schlock, but look beyond the cheesy schlock. You can find some commentary in there. It might not all be intentional. Like, I've heard people say, oh, people are now, like, looking back trying to analyze these movies, even though people just made them for fun and on a whim with a small budget. It's like, that might be true. Stuff can have commentary, whether it's intentional or not. Horror always just kind of, there's a lot of that. Like, you can go back to Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Black Christmas, all of that. This is not a new thing. It's just now people seem to be appreciating it a lot more and seeing it more. However, The Substance is an amazing one to do that with, and that is why it is my favorite Best Picture nominee and my favorite movie of 2024. Granted, it's tied with Dune Part 2. Well, that's my ranking of the 10 Best Picture nominees. Share yours in the comment section down below. It might not come as a big surprise that as someone who talks about heroes in horror, that Dune Part 2 and The Substance came in at my 1 and 2 spots. Kind of tied, but I will give the nod to The Substance. They're both amazing, among the greatest of all time, of the decade especially. Share your thoughts in the comment section down below. Hit the thumbs up if you enjoyed this video. Also, hit the thumbs down if you hated it. Hit the subscribe button if you like to talk heroes in horror, and hit the notification ding. Always remember that one man's shit is another man's art, and vice versa.